Hello, good evening, everyone. If you are joining live today, welcome. If you are watching this broadcast later, hello. My name is Peter Akis. I am hosting this webinar called Get Organized with OmniFocus. I like to help people be productive. I like to help people get organized. And that's what I'll try to do for you today using my favorite productivity tool, which I've been using for many years now, called OmniFocus. I think it's fantastic, and I'm so excited to be able to share that with you today. Couple of housekeeping items before we start. There's a chat box, should be towards the right of your screen. This way, view. This way. Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourselves there. I always like to see who's here. If you have any questions, I'll be talking for a little while, sharing with you my strategies on how to get really organized with OmniFocus. But if you have any questions, there's a question box below, so you can just ask your question right there. And if it's super urgent, I'll try to get to it right away if I see it. If not, I'll answer your questions after I share with you the strategies on getting organized with OmniFocus. I'll be sharing my screen most of the time, just so I can point out some things in OmniFocus for you. But then when we do Q&A, you'll be able to see my face again. You get to decide which is more fun. Right. I should also note that I'll be talking at sort of a high level about OmniFocus. I'm not going to assume that you have any prior knowledge of OmniFocus, but I am going to assume that you can figure out how to do basic stuff, such as figure out how to add projects and stuff like that. If you can't do this, then OmniFocus has a great manual that teaches you how to do the basics. So I'll be teaching you really how to fit it into your existing workflow. Now, I might do future webinars on more specific parts of OmniFocus, OmniFocus stuff, but today I'm really going to talk about high level how to fit it into your workflow. So without further ado, the three things that I want you to walk away with today after you watch this webinar are one, how to free up some mental bandwidth using OmniFocus. Two, how to feel more in control of all the things you want to do, all the projects you have by using OmniFocus. And number three, how to have productive work days and plan those work days using OmniFocus. So I'll talk about each of those subjects in turn, and then I'll do the Q&A. Now, you might ask yourself, why should I get organized to begin with? Why is it important to get organized? You might say you want to, right? But I like to always think, what's behind that? So I think if you're more organized, you're just going to be able to work smarter rather than harder. And so for me, that's the motivation to stay organized, especially when it comes to work, but also when it comes to my personal life. And OmniFocus can help you with both, actually. And I also think it's just you're going to do better work. And when you do better work, you're going to feel more proud of your work. And the prouder you feel about your work, I think the happier you're going to be. So to me, that's just the motivation. That's reason enough to try OmniFocus if you have not yet. Now, I want to talk a little bit about who OmniFocus is for and who it is not for, because those things are very important also. So OmniFocus is a solo task management system. Within OmniFocus, you cannot delegate tasks to someone else or receive tasks from someone else. There might be some limited functionality that allows you to do that in an upcoming OmniFocus version, but let's say there isn't for now. So if you're someone who is looking for a task management solution or a project management solution where you can assign tasks to teams, whether it's your team or your boss wants to assign tasks to you or whatever, OmniFocus is not for you. I recommend using different software. My favorite software to do this is called Basecamp over at basecamp.com. So try that instead of OmniFocus. But if you are looking for a solo project management system, I think OmniFocus is amazing and great for you. OmniFocus is pretty sophisticated, and I think that's a great thing. It allows you to get super organized. It does mean that it has a little bit of a learning curve. Now, hopefully, by watching this webinar, you'll have a shorter learning curve. It'll be less steep, but if you're looking for something that's just plug and play, immediately you can go run with it, that's probably not OmniFocus for you. So you have to be willing to invest a little bit of time. I think you're going to have a massive ROI if you do invest that time. Anyway, you have to be willing. Finally, OmniFocus runs on iOS and on Mac OS. So if you're not a Mac user at all, if you run like Android, if you have an Android phone, you run Windows on your desktop, then sorry, OmniFocus is not for you. Again, in an upcoming version of OmniFocus, there may be some web functionality. The developers have hinted at this. Don't hold your breath. I would say pick different software, go with Trello, go with Asana, something like that. Now, that was for the introduction. So let's talk about what I call part one, how to free up mental bandwidth using OmniFocus. I think the problem that a lot of us have, I certainly have this all the time and I hear other people say it too, is I've got so much stuff in my head. I don't know what to work on. And when I'm working on stuff, I get distracted because there's like this to-do list in my head, things I want to do. And it may, I might be working and I might be like, oh, I have to get some groceries later. It doesn't have to be things related to work. There's just so many things stored in your head. And those things stored in your head distract you from doing work. I think this is a common problem. And having a task management system can really help you avoid this problem. And OmniFocus in particular is super good at it because it is so sophisticated and you can literally dump everything you want to do in there and have it all out of your head so you can devote 100% of your attention to doing a good job at whatever it is you do. And what I basically want you to be able to do is I want you to be able to trust OmniFocus. So I want you to trust that everything you want to do, you need to do, you plan to do, someone else wants you to do, it's all in there. It's all in OmniFocus, and you can just look at the software and see, okay, what should I be working on next? And it'll be pretty obvious. That's the place that I want to get you to, because that way you don't constantly have to be thinking, am I forgetting something, right? And I think that voice of, am I forgetting something? Should I be doing something else? That can be incredibly distracting and prevent you from doing a good job at whatever it is you're doing. So that means OmniFocus needs to include all your tasks. I really recommend against running multiple task management systems, having some of the things you want to do in one, some of the things you want to do in the other one. I think it works much better if you put everything into OmniFocus. So there's a couple ways to do that. And here's an example. Let's say you have lots of meetings at work. And after these meetings, usually people assign you some tasks or you think of some stuff to do, you agree on some stuff to do. After a meeting, just sit down at your computer, even with your phone, whatever, and just immediately dump all the tasks that you were assigned, all the things you want to do as a result of this meeting, put them into OmniFocus. OmniFocus has an inbox feature for that, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and dump it all in there as soon as you can. Later on, we'll talk about how to organize it, right? That'll be part two. But I want you to get into the habit of putting everything in your system, and then we're going to organize it later. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to show you 2 ways to add stuff to OmniFocus. Share my screen. There we go. We've got the beautiful infinite loop. I will switch over to OmniFocus right here. Here's a look at my OmniFocus setup, actually, and I'm showing you a project. But up here on the left is the inbox. There's not that much in my inbox right now. Apparently, I only have 1 task in my inbox because the other ones have been assigned to projects. But after you sit down for that meeting, just add all your tasks right here. Apple N is the way you do it. Task, another task, right? Add stuff in here, and later on we'll organize it. But if it's all sitting in your inbox, then at least you won't forget about it. Another great way to add tasks to OmniFocus is whatever you're doing on your computer, you can pull up the quick entry box. I think by default, it's Option, Command, Space, but you can customize the keyboard shortcut. And it just pops up this nice little screen where you can add yet another task, and it'll go to your inbox if you hit save or enter right away, or you can just go and pick a project right away. Anyway, think about some times when you just want to dump stuff into your inbox quickly, whether that's after a meeting or if you've been on your bike and you think of lots of stuff to do, once you get to your destination, just do that quickly, and that way you can trust OmniFocus to have all of your tasks. Then I want to suggest that if you have a minute when you're entering your tasks, try and think of whether you need to add a due date. It's great to add those right away as opposed to later when we're going to organize things, just for those really time-sensitive things that you don't want to forget about. OmniFocus has due dates over here on the right. You get that like due in 1 week or whatever, or just set a date and it'll all be fine. I recommend putting due dates when there's serious consequences. So a lot of people might think, okay, I have this like another task, right? And let's say it's like buy some groceries. And I really would like to do it like today or tomorrow. And so you might be tempted to say, due tomorrow, right? And OmniFocus will start reminding you that it's due tomorrow. But, not buying groceries, I don't think that's worth adding a due date, because nothing really bad is going to happen if you don't complete this task by tomorrow, right? You might have to go out and like buy some dinner or whatever, or order dinner, or like eat something that you already had, but it's not like a serious, like substantial consequence. And so what I say is use due dates sparingly. Use them sparingly and for things that have substantial consequences. So for example, your boss says, we need to send this to the client by Monday, or else we're going to get some fine, or they're not going to pay us or whatever. Yeah, put a due date, right? It's due Monday. But don't use due dates for intention setting. Don't assign one that means, I intend to do this by tomorrow. We'll get to a different way of setting intentions in OmniFocus later. Don't use due dates for that, but use due dates when they're important. Now, on the other hand, OmniFocus also has this awesome feature called Defer Until, sometimes called a defer date or a start date. And if you put this in, it's just going to not, OmniFocus will not show you the task in most perspectives within OmniFocus until you hit this date. So for example, up here, it's actually nice. I have my 2018 taxes task, which is a task that's not available for me to do until at least January 1st, 2019, right? Because I'm filing taxes for the year 2018, so I have to wait until 2018 is over. So I've set a defer date of January 1st, 2019, and OmniFocus is going to hide this task in most views from me so that it doesn't clutter up my brain. Again, it's going to add, free up that mental bandwidth by not showing me stuff that I can't do yet anyway. I also added the due date, as you can see. So OmniFocus will start showing me this task on January 1st, and it will remind me to do it by April 15th, which I believe is the date that US taxes have to be filed. That's how you free up mental bandwidth in OmniFocus. Dump everything into the inbox. Use quick entry, right? Now, I want to talk about how you can feel more in control and feel less overwhelmed. I'm going to put myself back on for a second. There I am again. So number one was freeing up mental bandwidth. And the number two thing I want you to walk away with is how to feel in control. And the problem here that I'm trying to solve for you is that when you have a lot of things going on, right? Let's say you have work, you have your family to take care of, right? Maybe you do some volunteer work, so you got some items there. You want to go on like a vacation. And so all these things, all these sort of areas of your life, they have tasks that you need to do to hit goals, make progress, make stuff happen. And it can feel overwhelming. It can be, it's hard to know what to work on next when all these different areas are showing you different things you could do. Keeping it all in your head is hard. That's why we just talked about putting it into OmniFocus. But it can still be overwhelming, even if everything is in there. So how do we fix this second problem? A great way to reduce the overwhelm and feel more in control of the things that you need to do is by sorting your tasks into projects and folders. So OmniFocus has this awesome functionality of setting up projects, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And projects can be organized into folders. So I want to talk first about some terminology, because this is something that a lot of people use words interchangeably when they're not quite the same. So I'd like to get a little bit clear on that, right? Everybody knows what a task is. A task or an action is something you got to do. What's a project though, right? Sometimes people call OmniFocus project management software. I prefer to call it task management software, because project management, I think more in a big company with lots of people working on a project. And, you might use OmniFocus for your part of that. But I prefer to think of it as task management software. Yet, OmniFocus does work with projects, and this is where it gets interesting. What is a project? I mean, I like to quote David Allen, the inventor of getting things done. He says a project is just any sort of collection of tasks. It's like more than one task. So 2 or more tasks that are related, right? That go together towards achieving something. So, I mean, let's say you want to do the laundry. Yeah, you can make that a task, but at the same time, it might include some steps, right? It might include gathering all your dirty laundry, putting it in the laundry basket, putting it in the laundry machine, right? Then putting it in the dryer, and maybe ironing something. And so you've got a lot of sub steps, and those are tasks, and the whole thing, we're going to call it a project. So another way to think about it is you can't do a project, right? It's not do the laundry. I mean, you can't do it. You can do it, but it has like multiple steps. Whereas say like put your clothes in the bin. I mean, that's like a thing you can do right now. But do the laundry, it takes like a longer time. Just a different way of thinking about it. So I'm gonna go back to OmniFocus right here and show you a little bit about how I've set up my projects. So I've divided my projects into folders: business, finance, health, home, relationships, right? Some volunteer work I do, trips. Business is interesting for me because, that's what I'm doing right now. So OmniFocus allows you to get quite granular about how you organize your projects, right? I suggest having some, I don't know, I have maybe like 8 or something, 10 big folders, and they each have a bunch of sub-projects. And I suggest being quite liberal about making projects, even things that seem to you like they shouldn't take that long. I like to say, make it a project. For example, I want to set up a coaching page on my website, right? So I created a project for that because it has multiple sub-steps, tasks, and I put those tasks in there. And the great thing about setting things up this way is that I can go to this project, I can focus on it, very fancy OmniFocus feature, and it just hides all the other projects, by the way. And I know exactly what to do next. There's some other person that I really respect, Jessica Ely. She's awesome. She has a great website. I want to look at her website a little bit for inspiration when I'm going to set up my own coaching page, right? Then I want to create a page in WordPress. Then I want to write some text. And so rather than having to sort of reimagine all these steps in my head every single time, I can just go into my OmniFocus because I already wrote it out, and I can do it this way. You might know that OmniFocus has several types of projects right up here on the right: parallel projects, sequential projects, and single action projects. And what those do is just describe different types of relationships between the tasks in a project. So, for example, when I set up a coaching page, I want to get some inspiration on this other person's website first before I start writing and creating my own page. So I call this a sequential project, which just means this first task is the only one that's available right now. Until I do this one, this next task won't even show up as available. It's a little grayed out, as you can see. Parallel projects means you can do all the actions together at the same time, right? Single action projects means this project's never really going to end. It's something like client acquisition that's just always going to be going on, right? An ongoing project that you'll never really complete. So make use of these features. And even if you're using different software, make use of the organizational features. It's so useful. Spend some time, think about how to set it up. Again, in OmniFocus, I suggest having some big groupings, folders of different areas of your life, and then creating some projects for single tasks that are just quick one-off things that don't need to be a project. Periodic tasks, I like to group them. I think it's a great way to see, what are all the things that I should do regularly, right? For me, it's only one thing right now: writing my daily message to my email list. By the way, if you're not on my email list, you can just go to peteruckes.net and sign up right there. It'd be great. I write every day about something related to productivity, how to do what you care about better. So a little plug there. Yeah, and so after you've got all these projects set up, after you've got these folders set up, right? How can you feel more in control of what you need to do? And this is where the OmniFocus magic comes in. It's the review functionality. I put a little coffee icon here because I enjoy doing my review with some coffee. The getting things done system, David Allen's system, which OmniFocus is loosely based on, suggests that you do periodic reviews of all of your projects. And a review just means you're going to look at the project and see if anything needs to be updated, right? Why would you do this? First of all, housekeeping. As you can see, I've got quite a few projects here. I've got quite a few folders here, but sometimes something just isn't necessary anymore. Like I'm going to go on a trip to Hong Kong in August, as you can see right here on the left. But what if I decide to cancel that? I can just click on it and then I can go dropped over here and it will just go away, right? And so rather than letting old projects sit and clutter up your view, it's not going to have you feeling in control, right? So by periodically reviewing all these projects, you're going to have a more up-to-date list, and that's really going to help you work more efficiently and feel more in control of all the things you need to do. Now, the built-in review functionality is pretty awesome. So, for example, if a project is up for review, oh, whoops, I think I wrote tomorrow. I should be writing today. Let's say a project comes up for review. It will show up right here with this beautiful dot right next to it. And what are you going to do, right? I suggest, first of all, doing this once a week for most projects. This project I'm actually reviewing once a month because it's a trip that's a little further away, so I don't need to do it quite as often. Especially for projects where you're working with clients, maybe projects where there's a lot of moving parts, maybe you're working with other people, I would suggest reviewing them at least once a week. So what do you do when you review? You just see, hey, this project, does it have any missing tasks? Is there anything that happened in the past week since I last reviewed that I haven't done yet that I need to do that's related to this? So just go ahead and add it, right? Then ask, any of these tasks on this list, can I drop them? You know, do I just not need to do them anymore? If so, delete them. Is there any task that I can defer to somebody else? If so, go ahead and defer them to somebody else. Get rid of them from your OmniFocus, right? Or maybe I'm dropping this entire project, or maybe I'm putting it on hold, right? The great thing about putting it on hold is it will sort of gray out all the tasks, as you can see, and they won't show up in some of your other OmniFocus perspectives, screens. You can think of them as screens anymore, just to unclutter your brain a little bit, right? So by periodically reviewing all your tasks, you're keeping your OmniFocus clean, and moreover, you're measuring your progress, basically, right? You're seeing, oh yeah, I've got that project and I haven't worked on it in a while. Hey, and it forces you to decide what to do with it. And I think that's where the real magic happens. All right. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen again for a minute. Oh, button. The third thing that I wanted to talk about today is how to have productive work days. So far we've talked about freeing up mental bandwidth using OmniFocus, and we've talked about how to feel more in control by organizing your tasks and projects in OmniFocus. And the third bit is how to have productive work days. I mean, OmniFocus is not going to magically make your work days much more productive. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. But what it will do is help you pick the right task to work on. So a big challenge for a lot of people, myself included, is what should I be working on today, right? Or what should I be working on this week or tomorrow, right? And it's not always obvious. You may have many different projects going on from many different parts of your life. And you might, within those projects, have lots of tasks that you could work on. And even if you're working X hours a day and you think you're working productively, if you're not working on the right things, in the end, you're not really meeting your goals, right? You're not completing your project. So OmniFocus can help you know what to work on next. And one way to do that is using the feature we just talked about, sequential projects, right? The projects where you have to do one task first and then the next one. And so when you look at the project, OmniFocus will tell you, this is the one you should work on right now, and then that one, right? So I think that's extremely useful. But you can also plan a little bit more actively. So let's say I want to plan what I'm going to do today. How would I do that in OmniFocus? I'm going to go back to the OmniFocus screen for a little bit. Right here. I suggest using flags to denote something you're going to do today. So let's say I have a person who sent me an email, Katie, and I want to respond to Katie and I want to do it today. In that case, I'm going to add a flag right up here on the right. And I suggest you use the flag functionality to mean I intend to do this today. Ooh, excuse me. So earlier, I suggested that you do not use the due date functionality for intention setting, for planning, right? I don't have to respond to Katie today. If I don't do it, nothing really serious is going to happen, but I would like to do it today. Therefore, I'm going to assign this task a flag. You can flag an entire project if you would like over here. Just flag an entire project. And I suggest you set up a today perspective that shows you all the things that are either due today or due soon, or that you've flagged. And so right here, I'm going to show you flag perspective, how I set it up. And I suggest you set it up the same way. The perspectives, by the way, are this custom OmniFocus feature. That is amazing. You're not going to find this in most other task management software. It's really where OmniFocus shines. Oh, sorry, here's my today perspective. I suggest you group actions by whether they're flagged, sort them by when they're due, and filter by due or flagged, and also show only available tasks. You don't want to show any tasks that you can't do because you've got to do another task first. Just set it up this way. And if you do that, you'll get this beautiful perspective right here that just shows you everything you want to do today. Now, it's already towards the end of my day, 7:30 p.m. So I've done a lot of stuff already. So there's not that much left that I still intend to do today, right? But usually you've got a pretty big list going on here. And you can make it either on the morning of each day or set it up the night before. And for setting it up, I suggest you use the planning perspective. Now, the planning perspective is a beautiful perspective. I just love it. It basically shows you all available tasks, like everything you could possibly work on. Again, I'll show you how I've set that up. I group actions by context, although we're not talking about context today. Frankly, they're not super important. Filter by any status, but make sure it's only the available tasks. You could go really hardcore and only show the first available task. It's actually not a bad idea. And when you're planning, say today, when it's in the evening and you're planning tomorrow, just go through this list and flag any task that you want to do tomorrow, right? And it will show up in your today perspective. So what if it's 3 p.m. today and you would like to have a task you'd like to intend to do it tomorrow? You're planning to do it tomorrow. Well, if you flag it, it's going to show up right away. Here's a nice little trick. I defer it until tomorrow. I set a flag, and if I refresh this screen, which we can do by hitting this cleanup button right here, boom, it doesn't show. And it'll show again in your today perspective tomorrow. So that's how I suggest that you plan tomorrow. Now, what about days after tomorrow? Same thing, just write 3 days or whatever, right? I would say try not to plan too far ahead, because while I talk, I'm going to stop sharing my screen again. I find that if you try and plan more than a day or two ahead of time, what happens is that the work situation can change so much that things you plan to do are no longer the most important things to do. So if you are going to plan 2 or 3 days ahead, just make sure you reevaluate on the day or the day before, so you're not blindly working on something, but instead you've got a plan and it's up to date. And this is where your weekly reviews, which we talked about in part 2, are going to be super helpful also. So OmniFocus is not super suited to planning tasks like more than a day ahead anyway. So, if you really think Friday, I'm going to do this, defer the task until Friday, put a flag on it, but try not to have like 20 things ahead of time that you plan to do on Friday if it's still a couple of days ahead of time. All right. Now, planning ahead brings me to this interesting question that people ask often, which is, what if you have, when should I use my calendar and when should I use OmniFocus? For example, I have something that I'd like to do at a specific time. Should I put this in OmniFocus or should I put this on my calendar? Now, basically anything that's a task, it doesn't have to happen at a specific time, but maybe it does have to happen by a specific time, although not necessarily. It doesn't have to have a deadline. Put it in OmniFocus. But if it's an appointment, if it's a meeting, if it has to happen at a specific time, I suggest putting it on your calendar. And then you can also put it in OmniFocus. If you're like me, I really don't like having duplicate, things, having something in one app and in another app. So I don't like it having in my calendar and in OmniFocus. So I suggest distinguishing that way. If there's something and it's time bound, you have to do it at 2 p.m. like it's like a coffee date with someone, put it on your calendar. Don't worry about having it in OmniFocus. Have coffee with such and such, right? But if it's a task, is like, write this article or something, don't put it on your calendar. Instead, put it in OmniFocus. What you can do, and this is actually a really good strategy, is putting blocking out time on your calendar for doing this task. So you might say, write this post, from 10 to 1 on Monday. And by blocking out the time on your calendar, you're more likely to actually get to it. Other people are less likely to schedule a meeting during that time. So you could do it that way. But if it's a task, OmniFocus. If it happens at a specific time, it's an appointment, meeting, calendar. So those are the 3 parts that I wanted to talk about today, and I'll do a brief recap for you. First of all, we talked about how you can free up mental bandwidth. And I told you that the most important thing is you've got to trust OmniFocus if you're going to be using it. Dump everything in there, everything you want to do from all areas of your life. Then I said defer tasks liberally, but use due dates sparingly. So like I told you, defer dates are awesome. If there's something you can't work on yet, you don't want to work on it yet, defer it until some other time. You won't see it. It's not going to distract you. At the same time, be careful with those due dates. Don't use due dates to show intent, but instead use due dates for when there are serious consequences to not doing a particular task. So set those due dates. Just don't create fictitious due dates. Because if you create too many due dates without serious consequences, you're basically training yourself not to pay attention to those due dates. And then when something with serious consequences pops up as due, you might ignore it, right? You might have trained yourself not to worry about it. Then I told you how you can feel more in control of all the things that you want to do by organizing your tasks into project folders. And I showed you some examples. For example, I like to have a business folder with projects, a relationships folder with projects, a home folder with projects, right? So I suggest you set it up the same way and then, tinker with it a little bit. Maybe spend a couple of hours, try it out for a week or 2. If you don't like it, then tinker with it again. Avoid the trap of, I'm going to, work with my productivity software instead of actually getting stuff done. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people, myself included. So set it up once, test it out for a little bit, then make some changes, test the changes. Don't just keep tinkering with it as a way to procrastinate. Finally, we talked about how to plan your days, whether that's on the same day or for tomorrow or even a couple of days ahead, by deferring and flagging, and by setting up the planning perspective and the today perspective. And that was it. Now, there's obviously way more to OmniFocus than I've been able to talk about right now. And I might do future webinars on more advanced strategies if you would like me to. If you do have questions, let me know. Send me an email at peter@peterhukkies.net. I can probably help you with it. I also wrote a big guide to using OmniFocus that's quite in depth. If you just Google Guide to OmniFocus, it'll be one of the first links. And yeah, you can take a look at that, and it'll have screenshots to tell you exactly what to do also. Now, I really encourage you, if this all sounds like a little intimidating, oh, there's so much I can do with OmniFocus, give it a shot for a couple hours, see how you like it. The best way to figure out if it's going to help you be more productive is just to go for it, try and work with it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. And if you like it, you do. Keep in mind, there's a bit of a learning curve. So try and invest a couple of hours ahead of time. Now, let me check. I see that there are no questions. That's all right. If you do have questions, again, email me. And in the meantime, thank you very much for either attending live or for watching this broadcast later. And I hope to see you at my next webinar. Thank you.